That was Sinding's Rustle of Spring, and it was performed by Sir Stephen Hough on his new album, Piano Postcards, on the Hyperion Records label. I'm Erica Worth, and welcome to this Pianist podcast episode. I'll be speaking to Stephen about his choice of repertoire for the album and much more. Stephen, it's great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Erica. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Firstly, we're here to talk about your new album, Piano Postcards, which I don't think is actually out yet till early July. If you could tell us a bit about it and the tracks that are coming out now and then and the whole vision behind the album.
Well, I've always, the earliest records that I owned as a little boy were records of little individual pieces. The very first record was called Clive Lithgow Plays. And in fact, it had a number of tracks on that I've recorded myself subsequently. The most important record I ever owned as a child was one called Keyboard Giants of the Past, with Rachmaninoff and Cortot and Paderewski and all of these great artists that have been my most important inspiration over the years. So very early in my recording career, I guess in the mid-80s, I made a record called Piano Album. And then I did Piano Album 2, and that became a double disc. And then I did the new Piano Album, and then the English piano, and the Spanish, and the French, and the Mozart album, and then a Dream album. Well, this is really the last in a long line of these things. I must have recorded hundreds of these little tracks.
Amazing.
And the great pianists from the turn of the 19th, 20th century up to the Second World War always had these interesting encore pieces in their repertoire. And they were often written by themselves. I mean, at the very height, someone like Rachmaninoff, but also Godowsky, and then later Earl Wild, and so on. And I've always had a fascination for these pieces that reveal something of the character of the pianist who is playing and who wrote them. And so I thought, well, let's do another one. And we got a bit tired of the album tag. So it's actually someone at Hyperion came up with this idea of picture postcards, because there are pieces from all over the world on this record. And it's a kind of a cute idea that I'm in Taiwan, and I send a postcard home, and it's the famous Taiwanese song, Pining for the Spring Breeze, arranged in the style of Rachmaninoff. I actually did this as an encore after Rachmaninoff Fourth.
I mean, it sounds amazing. That track
well, it
is
starts
incredible.
like the G major prelude, and
Exactly.
everyone thinks that's what's going to happen, and then suddenly the tune doesn't come in, but you hear this the pentatonic tune of the Taiwanese song. So, yeah, it's really it's the world of the encore, really.
That's interesting. I mean, there's such a wonderful range. My goodness, it's about how many tracks? 26 tracks in total. From your standard Rachmaninoff to MacDowell to A Wild Rose, and then some composers I'd never heard of, such as Matthew Wilder and Malcolm Williamson. Beautiful pieces by them.
Oh, thank you. Well, Malcolm Williamson was one of those on that very first LP. And when I say, it means a lot to me because we had literally no classical music in the house at all. And so when I started piano lessons, because at my insistence, my parents said, no, we're not buying you a piano. Eventually, they bought the cheapest one they could find, which was £5 from an antique shop in Stockton Heath, Cheshire. And I started lessons. This was the first record they bought. And on this record was so many pieces that I had subsequently learned. So I can pinpoint a moment. Most people have music around them, and parents are playing things, and the radio has Radio 3 or Classic FM. But I really know the exact moment when I first got to know about music. So, and this Williamson was on there. So I knew this piece before I knew anything by Mozart, Mahler, Mendelssohn, Brahms, all these. I knew these names I didn't know them at all, but I knew Malcolm Williamson. So there we are.
That is incredible. Really, that's incredible. And then you've got your arrangements from Mary Poppins, which are so divine.
Well, these were, of course, a Lang Lang commission. Lang Lang did this album for DG during the pandemic, his Disney album.
Yes.
And he was in touch and wanted Disney arrangements. And so I actually, in the end, did 12 for him. And 6 of them are on this record, because there are the 3 pieces from Mary Poppins. And then there's also Do You Want to Build a Snowman from Frozen? There is The Reflection from Mulan, and then Remember Me from Coco. Now, those last three, I'd never heard these before. I knew about the show Frozen. But then when someone suggested, well, what about Remember Me? I said, oh, what's that? So I went to YouTube and I saw that there was like 700 million views of this. I thought, well, obviously I've been left out of this. And then it's of course it's a beautiful, lovely sentimental tune, and I did that arrangement. Some of them were very specific. They wanted, first of all, always classical. I think, in fact, Lang Lang had heard my arrangements of Richard Rodgers that I did decades ago, and
Okay.
he liked this idea of having arrangements done in a classical style.
Yes.
And I tried, well, Chim Chim Cheree is really in the style of Rachmaninoff. And
Mm.
also I think the reflection from Moulin has that kind of, there's some Debussy, there's some Rachmaninoff in there. So I wanted to do that, and actually with the Remember Me, they wanted a very straightforward, simple version. So it really is what's on the tin. I have a little counter melody that I wrote above the melody for verse two, and then there's one harmonic shift which is a little nod to Richard Strauss, sort of shifting by a
Gorgeous.
semitone into an enharmonically weird place. I just allowed myself that little fingerprint on there.
Oh,
But basically, it's a simple arrangement of a very beautiful song.
amazing, amazing. And yet, and then there are also obviously many an encore, but many of your favorite encores, like that Sibelius Etude in A minor, which is
Yeah.
just wonderful. And something that was new to me was wait a minute, the Passepied by Delibes.
Aha, well, that was on the LP Keyboard Giants of the Past that my parents bought for me, played by Gabrilovich. Exquisitely played, and I've loved that piece always. So yeah, I recorded that, and also on that LP was the Liebeslied of Rachmaninoff, of course, very
Yes,
famous. A lot of people have
yes.
played that. It's one of my favorite tracks of piano playing ever. His performance on that
Oh,
record of that piece, to me, I don't think anyone's ever played the piano more extraordinarily than that 3 minutes that he recorded in, I
oh,
think, 1923. Here we are
yes.
100 years later, and it still hasn't been bettered.
No, oh no, you're absolutely right. I mean, back to the Delibes, I was thinking of putting that in Pianist magazine. Is that a challenging piece? I looked at the score very, very quickly.
No, it's very well. Everything is impossibly difficult, isn't it, Eric? As you know. But if we're being honest between ourselves and not for the audience listening, no, it's not a very difficult piece. In fact, I don't even know the original. It's from one of the ballets, I think,
It
or
is,
operas.
but I think it's his arrangement, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so. And it's very straightforward and very beautiful. And yeah, his last verse takes it in an interesting harmonic
exactly.
direction, which I like those little sort of twists.
Exactly. Oh, okay. I might feature that in the magazine quite soon. I love the fact that you've got quite a bit of chaminade on there.
Wonderful Chaminade. She was also very much part. Her autumn was on this LP of Clive Lithgow. It was right there from the beginning. And then my piano teacher, Heather Slade Lipkin, her mother,
Oh, yeah.
played piano as well. And I can only ever remember her playing Chaminade. She would play all these pieces of Chaminade. So again, I knew these before I knew a lot of things. And she played the toccata.
Yes.
I can even at these now, we're talking, it's not far, it's 50 something years ago. And I
Oh
can
my goodness.
still see the way her hands lifted up from the keys when she played those staccatos. Certain things when you're a child are indelible, they just stick. And it's Auntie Joan playing the Chaminade toccata.
Isn't that
Uh,
remarkable? But
it's
Chaminade wasn't even that well known back then, was she?
No, well, she was in our household, she's always been part of my life, and I played autumn when I was like 8 years old, and I've played it
Did
a
you?
lot since last season. I was opening my recital program with it, and it's a gorgeous tune. I mean, she writes with fantastic finesse
Hmm.
and such a sense of the keyboard and what works well. It
Mm.
sounds harder than it is usually, which is always a
Yes.
nice thing.
Nice.
But she was an absolute expert in writing for the instrument.
Amazing. And another one that you most probably learnt when you were quite young because it's so well known is Sinding's Rustle of Spring.
I didn't actually. I sort of vamped through it. I never learned it as much. I never played it in a concert until a few
Mm.
years ago, and
Oh,
I was just thinking of doing it again. I've always liked it very much as a piece. It was in everyone's piano bench, wasn't it? From every if you
yes,
had an aunt or a grandmother or something who played the piano, singing was there. It's
yes.
so yeah. I learned it just a few years ago.
Oh, it's a wonderful. Well, I mean, this album, I mean, when you say you started learning at the age of 8, autumn, that's incredible. I mean, you must have been quite a pianist at the age of 8 then.
I had a quick start. Once I started learning, I was absorbing it very, very quickly. I had these years in my teens, early teens, particularly
Mm.
when I lost interest in the piano and was not
Oh, right.
working very hard. And
Oh.
I've sort of written about a lot of this in my memoir, enough in case anyone wants to find out more. But I'm just looking at the list myself here. Now, Nature Boy, which is a song from Nat King Cole, of course, that I've always loved. That was an idea of Igor Levit. We were talking during the pandemic, and we spoke about various things. And he said, "Wow, I'd kill for an arrangement of Nature Boys." So I don't know whether he has killed yet, but anyway, this will be the first recording. And I wanted to take this also in a slightly different direction because already the harmonies are quite chromatic, really. It's a very unusual pop song. It seems a
Okay.
lot more than a pop song in a way. So I've taken some of the implications of those harmonies and take them a little further down the same road.
Goodness, that's amazing. And have you played it or shown Igor Levitt the score?
Well, he's got a copy of the score. I will send him a track when it's out, and he can hear it there. Yes.
So it's embargoed.
Yeah, almost. I mean, yeah.
Oh, oh, that's fantastic. And I mean, all these countries and all these composers, and the name of the album being Piano Postcards, and that's all. It's to do with you traveling around the world, all four
Sort of.
continents. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't 100% on my mind when I was assembling the record, but it's just when the record came together and we looked at it and thought, what are we going to call this? It just seemed to be this almost like a travelogue.
Okay. I mean, and you yourself, you travel so much. When we touched base last week, you said you'd had an utterly insane week. Tell us about your week last week.
Well, it was insane months ago when it was planned because I was playing Rachmaninoff third this week, Rachmaninoff second, first next week, and the Emperor and a recital program all within about 2 weeks. And then my management said that Yefim Bronfman had cancelled in Berlin, and they wondered if I could go and play Brahms too. Well, that is a piece that I've played since I was quite young, and so it's one of those pieces that comes back quicker than most. And I thought, well, I haven't played a concerto in Berlin for a few years. Okay, why not? Let's do it. So I played on the Tuesday the Rachmaninoff third, and then flew on Wednesday to rehearse. And we rehearsed Wednesday and Thursday. Friday morning we had a sort of run through. Then Friday lunchtime I flew back to London because I'd agreed to do the Barnsbury Book Festival. And it's quite a small thing. It's their first year, but they were going to do an interview with me about my memoir.
Mm.
And and it looked like I could do this. So I came back, I did that, and then I went right back to Gatwick, spent the night in a hotel at Gatwick that same day, and then took the 7 o'clock EasyJet to Berlin the next morning, having had about 4 hours sleep, and pretty much straight into the dress rehearsal. Fortunately, I do sleep quite well. So I had a very light lunch of some not very richly dressed fish, and I got into bed. And I slept for a couple of hours, got up again, had a nice hot shower, and then went over and played Brahms 2. And then I'm back yesterday, and now I have Rachmaninoff 1 coming up tomorrow. So I
Where's
need to do a
that?
quick.
Where's
That's in
Rachwan?
Scotland, the Royal Scottish National Orchestra with John Wilson.
Lovely.
So don't tell them that I had all this going on because they might be worried that I wasn't concentrating enough on repertoire for them. But it's not always as crazy as that.
No.
But this week has been. And then I'm back to Berlin actually a week today to do this recital there that was also planned a while ago.
Oh my goodness. But all this big repertoire, especially the concertos, how do you find the time to practice for the next concert? Or it's so much in your fingers that you don't need to do that much?
Well, I do find that if I'm playing Brahms 2, I might be warming up with Rachmaninoff 3. Let me put it like that, because I don't like actually to play the piece I'm about to play on stage too much, but
Okay.
in the dressing room, because it's partly superstition. I sort of feel that it may get stale, or I feel that I might find some area that goes wrong in the practice room, and then I think, oh my goodness, it's going to go wrong again. So I like to get rid of all that sort of neurosis and just it's really a matter of getting the fingers working. I
Yes.
wouldn't want to practice something like Rachmaninoff, just minutes before going to play Mozart, let's say. Partly because the whole spirit is and
Yes.
psychology is completely different, and also because the way you use your arm and fingers is completely different. So actually warming up for Mozart with Rachmaninoff is not really going to make you very warmed up for Mozart. The other way can work.
Mm.
So I have practiced Mozart backstage before playing Rachmaninoff.
Okay.
I don't know why that's the case, but I just found it was easier to lift up to the more muscular
Mm.
form than it is to come down from the heavy form to the lighter
Yes.
way of
I can
using the
understand
arm.
that. Yes.
But these concertos become our friends, and we travel with them all the time. And I've been playing for decades now, and many concertos, of course, become part of your repertoire. So you're playing them sometimes every season. I
Mm.
think Brahms' First has been a piece I've played pretty much every season. Certainly one of the Rachmaninoffs, Paganini Rhapsody, I've played a tremendous amount. And so, uh, yeah, it's what I say to young people who, are thinking of careers. It's the concertos that matter. Although
Mm.
when you're studying at college, you're learning all the solo repertoire. The reality of it, when you get out there, it's going to be probably 70% concertos to 30% recitals. And it's what I did this past week, the stepping in for somebody who's ill. Now, this was just a bit of a luxury for me, but at the beginning of a career, that is the way that many people get
Yes.
started. We've
Yes.
mentioned Lang Lang. It's exactly what happened to him. Someone cancelled in Chicago, in Ravinia, for Tchaikovsky 1. He got a phone call. He went out. He played. It was a huge success, and he's never looked back since. I mean, he did not go the competition route,
No.
and that happens for many people. It happened for me at the Hollywood Bowl. Actually, I was home in Manchester. It was Paganini Rhapsody. I think it was it Pogorelic or maybe not. It was somebody who cancelled. Could I go out? And I think I had to leave the next day. And it was Charles Groves, interestingly. And
Oh.
I'd never played, well, I played a couple of concerts in America, but so I flew to Los Angeles, absolutely, jet lag, one rehearsal, Hollywood Bowl. But it went well, and they asked me back, and the manager of the orchestra there was had a lot of connections all over the country, and he spoke to people, and they spoke to people. And so, really, I'm going to America next week, to Atlanta and Cincinnati, and it all really comes from that moment of stepping in at the Hollywood Bowl and the sort of snowball that happened of the career along the way. But it would have been no good to say, well, I don't play the
Oh.
Paganini Rhapsody, but I do play. I've got a wonderful recital program with the Waldstein and the Chopin ballades. Well, no, it has to be that concerto.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Same
That
thing
is.
happened in Chicago downtown with the orchestra a few years later. Someone cancelled for Bartok 3. Can you do it? I happened to be, I'd learned it very thoroughly. It was all fingered in my score. That's something else I've spoken about. Write in your fingerings because it takes you half the amount of time to get the piece back from nothing.
Yeah.
Because you start already, it's like cooking
Yeah.
in a restaurant. If you've got something half ready, you can do that dish. If you're going to do a pie and you've not even got the pastry rolled out, you won't be able to do it in the restaurant because it will take 40 minutes and the guests will have left
That
without
is
paying the
so
bill.
interesting, Stephen. And I like the way you brought up fingering because I think the hardest thing or the most frightening thing to do is to change your fingering at the last minute.
Yes, and it can be very annoying if you suddenly find a great fingering that you'd not realized
Yes.
before. Well, it sort of happened in the Brahms this week. There was a fingering that I'd not thought of before, and I did change it. And actually, it worked better on this occasion. But I believe passionately in fingering
Mm.
because I think
Mm.
when you learn a piece, deciding the fingering you're going to do is part of that learning process. It's actually just to play it and sight read it until it kind of feels okay and then it's ready to go on stage. No, I think you begin, for me anyway, by
Yes.
this. And I love it. I love this sense of what are the possibilities? We have 10 fingers. What are the possibilities? How can we make it, well, either easier to play, clearer to play, more musically right? There are some fingerings which are more awkward, but actually which give you the musical message. And there are
Mm.
certain moments. There's one moment in the Chopin ballad, fourth ballad. It just means altering one finger, and the passage, which is often goes wrong, never goes wrong. So it's one finger, and I love that sort of thing, and I think this is what students should be encouraged to do and write it in. Because believe me, 24 years after you've played a piece, you come back to it, you will not remember the fingerings you did. Whereas if they're written in, you step right back into the seat and you can get going.
That is great advice there. Wow. I'd love to know what that fingering is. The fourth ballad.
Well, next time we meet.
Oh, so it sounds like you really, really like to travel.
Oh, I hate traveling, Erica. No, I do actually. I
Oh,
I don't like the physical act of, I spent my teenage years, again, this book, I wrote about it in my bedroom, listening to pop records and burning joss sticks and doing yoga on the floor without any clothes on. I sort of feel like that was the high point of my life. And I often think back to that bedroom painted purple in the 1970s, and I sort of I'm very shy, you see, really. So in a way, this life is, I've learned how to overcome it, and I've learned how to fake it when I can't overcome it. But I'm a very private person in a way, and so going out onto the stage, I love sharing this music with people, but I don't love the sort of vulnerability always that comes from that.
mm,
I mean, you are putting yourself, well, first of all, you're putting your emotions out for everyone to manhandle, if
mm,
that's the word.
mm.
And also, you're sort of putting yourself in a position of being tested, aren't you? Because the virtuoso repertoire, it's a bit like being a high wire act. And so it's both. It's the emotional vulnerability and the technical vulnerability. And there are times when I rather wish I were at home watching a box set.
Of course, don't we all? But maybe then you prefer the recording studio.
No, I hate that too. Well, recording is wonderful when it's going well. So on the day when you're in the studio and you're feeling like you're playing at your best, and you're getting takes down and you think, well, I can't do better than that. That is a wonderful feeling because you know it's being preserved. It's like sort of, your legacy in some sort of way. But my goodness, that's, 1 out of 100 takes. It feels
Hmm.
like that. And you just sometimes hardly know how to play a C major scale because you become neurotic. You start focusing on the wrong things. You start obsessing about details. You go back to listen to a take and you think it went badly, so you're expecting it to be bad, and you hear the bad things. You hear what you don't do, but what you might have done. And so, again, that's another technique. You have to learn to let go and realize that even a terrible take, you can do another one. At least in solo recordings, there's time, and you need a producer who has the right
Yes.
psychology. It's
Yeah.
very important.
Yes.
You want a producer who is encouraging, but isn't full of BS. You don't want
Yeah.
to play your worst and go in and she
Yeah.
says, "Oh, that was incredible," when you know it was rubbish.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you also don't want someone to say, "Well, that was rubbish,"
Mm.
because you know it and you don't want to be reminded of it. So it's a balance really. But I'm glad that I've done over 70 albums
Yeah.
now over the years, and I'm glad I've done them. I would feel that if I hadn't done those, everything would have slipped through my fingers a bit like sand, and I wouldn't have anything to show for it. Whereas I do at least have those, and that they'll outlive me if in some form or other, I imagine.
It's amazing. I mean, when did you start out with Hyperion? I mean,
That would have been in the early 90s, and I had this contract with Virgin, and I did, I don't know, about 10 albums for Virgin. And then they were bought by EMI, and I wasn't part of the new regime's plan. So I basically had nothing to no recordings. And actually, at that time, this is the late 80s, early 90s, it was really essential to make recordings. It's not in the same way now because we've got YouTube and we've got other ways to get to people. We can release our own albums on Spotify, and with the right promotion, they can have more clicks than on a major label. But
Yes.
then you needed CDs in the shops.
Mm.
So Mike Spring had always been in touch, asking about whether I'd like to do something for Hyperion. At the point I was doing the stuff for Virgin, that wasn't really possible. So I went to see him, and he said, "Well, we'd love you to do something in our Romantic Concerto series. Is there anything that comes to mind?" So I have a very close friend in Chicago who knows everything about piano literature. It's incredible. And I said, when I'm there next, which was in a couple of months, let's go through some scores and see what's around. So he went to the Chicago Public Library, and we had an absolutely huge pile of different piano concertos. And we went to Steinway's downtown in, I think it's called Beautiful Sound, the shop. And we piled these scores on one side of the piano. And we went through them, one, two, three. And I was getting a little dispirited because we were down to the sort of R's, and I wasn't finding anything that I really loved. And then we had the Sauer concerto, the first Sauer concerto. And I thought, gosh, this is really beautiful. Very elegant, gorgeous tunes, beautiful slow movement. So that's a possibility. So I put that on a different pile. And then the next one was Scharwenka number 4. Or I think actually he put all 4 Scharwenkas, but number 4. And I thought, well, this is really a great piece. Why has this never been recorded? Neither of them had ever been commercially recorded. So I mentioned this to Mike Spring, and he actually said, well, yes, I know about the Sauer. He said, we'd really like Sauer 1 and 2 on the same album. I said, no, I don't like the second as much as the first. So I persuaded him. And so we did that. And then, that won the Gramophone Award. So that was a lovely way to begin with Hyperion. Then the second release was York Bowen.
Oh, yes.
And that was the solo record. Ted Perry, very resistant. No, I don't want any more piano music. We got too much piano music. And so I thought, oh, but York Bowen, he's a very wonderful English composer. Very little had been recorded at that point. Most of it wasn't even published or was out of print. So I persuaded him, and then that did well. And then so it sort of gathered steam from there, and to this day. And here I am still recording for Hyperion
Yeah.
30 years later.
I mean, it's amazing. Long may it continue. And now your own compositions, obviously, that's a very big part of your musical life as well.
Yeah.
You've written numerous piano sonatas, and I believe a brand new second movement for Beethoven's Piano Concerto Number 3.
Well, that was a commission by Omer Meyer-Welber for the orchestra in Hamburg, the opera orchestra. And he was commissioning composers in his first season there to write alternate movements for various famous works. So the Bruch Violin Concerto got a new first movement. Tchaikovsky's Symphony got a new second movement or something. And he asked me would I like to be part of this. And so I thought it was a very interesting idea. What he wanted to do was to create a sense with works that are very well known of the unexpected, much as you would have had when you first heard the piece back in Vienna in 1800 or whenever the concerto was first played. So I thought, okay, and I was thinking what would work. And I didn't want to do a romantic concerto. I don't think you could do a second movement for the Grieg or something. But I thought, well, Beethoven, it's almost like writing a long cadenza, really. And so that's what I did. I wrote this second movement based on material from the concerto, but reimagined in my own musical language.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, I played it in Birmingham a month or so ago, and I'm going to be playing it in Prague in a couple of months. They actually requested it, having heard about it. So, yeah, I
Has it
hope
been
that
recorded? Obviously not been recorded.
I think it's online. Actually, I think the performance from Hamburg is online. So, yeah, maybe on their website. So.
Fantastic. And,
But yeah, actually, writing is now becoming very central. And in fact, future recordings, we're going to do release an album of my 4 piano sonatas,
oh, great.
and also my piano quintet, which is going to be recorded this summer. That will go on another album. That was done for Lincoln Center Chamber Music Society, and I'm writing a requiem at the moment.
Okay.
but with the Brahms text, not the Latin church text.
Okay.
So, and that really came about just, I was interested in the psychology of Brahms, sort of an agnostic Lutheran writing this piece for his mother and putting together these biblical texts, mainly from the Jewish scriptures, from the Psalms and so on. But what do you pull together when you don't really believe, but you want something that's consoling? And so
Mm.
I find those texts very beautiful of Brahms and very interesting. It's more a requiem for the living. It's a requiem for the bereaved, for those who
Mm.
find it hard to think of death and losing people
Mm.
and so on. So I'm working on that. I'm using the same instrumentation that Brahms used and the same number of and exactly the same text, but in English, not in German.
Okay. There's this, I mean, quite poignant and sad that. And I mean, another concerto that sounds quite poignant and monumental is the World of Yesterday concerto. You're
Yeah,
where? I mean, that's named after Zweig's
yeah,
monumental memoir. What made
yeah.
you? Wow.
Oh, there's a long history to this. So, much at the time that I saw you buying fruit and veg during the pandemic, I got an email from a film director in Los Angeles that Leonard Slatkin had suggested my name as someone to write him a film score because he was making a movie about a concert pianist writing a piano concerto, and he wanted someone to write a piano concerto for this movie. So I got to work on this, and it was all Vienna in the early
Oh,
1930s. And also the mountains, and this crazy baroness brought this American composer in to write a piano concerto based on the sketches her sister had left before her death. And then it all goes wrong because the woman becomes psychopathic and she doesn't like anything that he's writing and locks him away until he writes something that she likes. Anyway, the movie never happened in the end, but I'd started a lot of sketches for it. And I phoned up my manager a year later when everything had fallen through, and I just said, "Well, do you think I think I've got a concert piece here. I could just, work with these sketches and make a piece. Do you think there'd be any interest?" And so they put out some feelers, and actually the same day we had a commitment from Utah Symphony for the world premiere. They just said, "Absolutely, we want this." And then the Halle Orchestra were interested, and then Hyperion said, "Definitely, let's do it." So the whole thing came together, and it's actually I think it's been about 7 orchestras now have done it, and I'm doing it
wow.
soon in Poland, and then it will go next year to Dusseldorf and to Berlin. So yeah, it's sort of taken off a little bit, and it's great fun because I'm sort of traveling, playing my piano concerto in the way that pianist composers always did. That's what people wrote piano concertos for themselves to play. That's what how the form happened.
My goodness, it sounds so interesting. And you said Hyperion was interested, is interested. Is it coming out on Hyperion?
It's there. You can hear it, Erica. It's on Hyperion. The
Oh,
CD's out, the LP's out, and it's all over Spotify if you want to hear it there.
oops, oops.
No, it's okay.
Whoops. Okay, I'll go and listen to it straight afterwards. I mean, I was going to ask you about what inspires you, but it seems there's so many things, you know, in your mind, and you get so much inspiration from all over the place. So it's easy for you to come up with ideas for your compositions.
Oh, inspiration is money. Yeah.
Mm.
No,
No.
no, I'm kidding. No, I think that the initial inspiration, at least for the last couple of decades, has been a commission, really. Has been someone saying, could you write me a piece for this or, this length or whatever? And so that's a wonderful way to start. Because here we are with blank manuscript paper. Where do you
Yeah.
begin? What do you write it for? But if someone says, as they did, which really got me started 20 years ago, the Berlin Phil Wind Quintet, the piccolo player said, I want a trio for piccolo, contrabassoon, and piano.
Okay.
And so I thought, fantastic. So I started writing it the same day because I was very inspired, first of all, by their confidence in asking me to write this piece, but also by the idea of the smallest, highest instrument and the biggest, lowest
Mm.
instrument playing together with the piano in the middle. So that's also been recorded, but that's on bis. It's called Was mit der Trennen geschieht.
Okay.
So, but I think it's a double thing. It's the macro and the micro. I think I like to get a sense of the whole shape of the piece because for me, in music that I play as well as music that I write, the architecture is a central part.
Yes.
It has to feel the right shape.
Mm,
And so I need to get that sense. And then the micro part is finding some material that I can work with.
mm,
In this piano concerto, I had a theme for the Baroness and a theme for the young American composer. And out of the entire piece, those two themes are built. Everything is from those. And so I like that. I like to write. This is one of the reasons I love Brahms so much. I love the way he uses material in such an ingenious way, how everything is derived from a
mm,
small cell, or Sibelius is someone else. You know, I find that kind of the sort of intellectual backbone to things. I don't just want to sit down and write
mm,
tunes. I want something that really knits together in
mm.
a tight way.
Interesting. I mean, you are a Renaissance man. You really are. I mean, the writing, the composing, the painting. Um, I'm thinking, do you dance? I mean, are there other things that we
Is
don't
that
know
an offer?
about?
Is that an invitation?
Do you play the piccolo?
I did play the flute for a short while, but I was not, no. No, and I don't paint it. In fact, I haven't painted for years now. It's just a bit of a hobby, but um, no, I enjoy taking poetic ideas on journeys, and that I see the poetic in everything that I do, really, whether it's writing music, writing words, or
Mm,
playing the piano. It's the sense of going beyond the everyday, of words that mean something in a very mundane way,
mm,
being able to reach the skies, to have a spiritual meaning. And the same is true of notes.
mm. Interesting. If we rewind time a bit, because I'd love listeners to hear about your studies at the Juilliard back in the, I guess it was the 70s, 70s, 80s,
80s.
80s, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. That's okay.
In the 80s, wow. I gather you had a rather difficult, if famous teacher, piano teacher.
Yes, dear Adele Marcus. Well, she was legendary, of course.
Yes.
I never left my lessons in tears, although many did, but she was always rather um, wonderful to me. I think first of all, she liked men, teaching men more than teaching women.
Okay.
And secondly, she liked English men. In fact, I remember her saying that one of the pianists that she admired most was Solomon, and I found that interesting because he's not really her style. Her style was very heart on sleeve Russian. She was the assistant to Joseph Levine and so on. But she did also study with Schnabel, and I think she did have that um, Austro-Germanic background to her as well.
Yes.
Um, but she was complicated. Again, there's a whole chapter on her in my memoir with some
Mm.
of the anecdotes. I couldn't have stayed any longer with her than I did. I was there for a year. It would have
Oh,
destroyed me.
only a year
It would
with
have
Adele
destroyed me.
Marcus.
Yeah.
God.
Um, well, there's a lot to say, really. But I think by the time I studied with her, she was quite old and very forgetful and quite irrational at times. And if as I won the number competition when I was 21, just
Yes.
as I began my second year with her, and I had to get away. It's hard enough to start a career. There are so many pressures. But I had an Alice Tully Hall debut
Mm.
to prepare for, and we put together a program. And honestly, every other day she was phoning, suggesting different pieces. And oh, you can't. No, Chopin's never been your thing, dear. Never, don't play any Chopin. And you just start building up these neuroses, which just kill you. So I simply had to walk away and just do my own thing. And really, I've been doing my own thing ever since. And she made me very scared of playing for people because, and I'm very conscious of this in my own teaching, how one word can undermine someone's confidence in a way that destroys them. I mean, it can seem like nothing. So I'm very,
Mm.
very cautious. And it comes also, my main teacher, Gordon Green, all of he never wanted to impose his view. He wanted to open up your ideas.
Mm.
And he said to me a phrase I love. He said, I'm actually not interested in how you're playing now. He said, it's how you're going to play in 10 years that interests me.
Oh.
So it was all about the longevity of this, the longevity of a career, the way that you develop in an organic way.
Mm,
Of course, a lot of this hits against the idea of competitions because people do enter college
mm,
now at 18 and the only thing on their mind is winning a competition. It's
mm.
not how can I be a better musician, how can I play more, how can I get my repertoire. It's winning a competition. And of course, that was the opposite of Gordon. I mean, if you'd come in to
Mm.
him as well, I did, I suppose. I said, do you think I should enter some competition? He did. Now? Well, let's talk in 8 years, you know.
Golly.
But there is a wisdom behind it. Not that
Mm.
it applies to everyone, and of course there are huge exceptions, not least the one competition jury I was on, where Yun Chan Lim won at 18. But
Yes.
one would have to say that he is the exception. There
Yes.
aren't many 18-year-olds with his, well, first of all, with his repertoire, apart from with his personality and ability to be himself and to be an extraordinary, unique artist.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, because they're so young. And I mean, Yun Chan is an exception. But, if you win a competition, you've got to have everything there. The repertoire, especially the repertoire, as you said, all those concertos, got to be
yeah,
ready with all your concertos.
yeah.
It is,
And you
there's
need
so,
something to say. It's like if someone invites you to make a recording from a competition, can you really record the Chopin Barcarolle in a way that makes it worth putting alongside 500 other recording? What do you have to say about it that's actually different from
mm,
what everyone else has said? And I don't mean just going in and saying, well, no one has taken time there, so maybe if I take time there, it'll make it different. Not self-consciously making it different, but living with a piece that it grows into being part of you. And that, like farming, can't be rushed. Uh,
mm,
Things have to happen in their own time. And so I do
mm,
encourage young people as much as they can to try and feel free and free to make mistakes. You see, I think it's terribly important to make mistakes.
definitely.
Beethoven wrote his Ninth Symphony and he got it wrong many, many times before the final sketches got it right. So this is about development, and this is actually one of the areas where AI, of course, is completely hopeless. AI never deliberately gets it wrong. Or, the idea for AI is to get it right as quickly as possible and as right as possible, but that's not true with the arts. You
Mm,
actually need to develop by making mistakes because it's a sort of process. It's like a pruning. You don't want a bush to be perfect and then never to change. You want to be constantly shaping that bush, clipping
mm.
off the stray. I'm talking like I'm a gardener. I'm looking
That's
out right now
great.
at my garden that's a complete mess. But you know what I mean? It's that sense of that we grow as human beings physically, and art is the same. It
Yes.
grows, it changes.
Yes, we have different periods as well. I mean,
Yeah,
look at some of the artists, visual.
yeah.
Gosh, Stephen, lots to think about here. I'm sure you're an amazing piano teacher. I mean, there's just so much there.
I enjoy doing it.
You teach at
Um,
Juilliard. You're
I
on the
have one
faculty.
student at a time there. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Um,
Lucky student.
and well, I hope so. It's interesting, that the student who won the Hastings competition, Ryan
Yes.
Zhu, was a student of mine
Oh,
there, and I just heard I was down there because they all had to play my piece, and he sounded so wonderful, and in fact, he's improved so much since he left me, and I thought, well, maybe the sign of a good teacher is that you don't cling on, that you're happy for someone. All I want is for my students to sound better. Now, whether that comes from things I say, things I don't say, things that I say that they think about years later, or whenever it is, I think you need that kind of generous spirit in order to be the right sort of teacher. Because
mm.
all that matters, a teacher's career doesn't matter. All that matters is that the student who's getting those lessons improves, and not just improves, but their own personality is brought out. I don't want
And
someone
not
just
the
to be
personality of the teacher.
absolutely. I don't want someone to be a carbon copy of me. And I think this was one of the problems with a teacher like Adele, Marcus, is that the way they taught was they stripped everything away and refashioned you in their image. That was the way. And
Mm.
that was never what I was taught with Gordon Green. All his students sounded different. And I really treasure that from that time.
Okay, Stephen, listen, we've got like 10 minutes maximum left, maybe five. I'm looking at the clock here before we get cut off. So I'm going to finish with some really light-hearted questions that I'd like you
Okay.
to answer off the cuff. Be interesting to hear how you reply. First one, if you could play only one composer from now on, who would it be?
I think it would have to be Chopin, actually,
Oh,
because no one wrote more beautifully for the piano. And I find his music more and more gorgeous as I get older, and I'm more and more touched by its emotional restraint and yet also its emotional revelation and the sheer craftsmanship of it. You know, he writes just gorgeously for the instrument. So that's my choice.
oh, fantastic. Okay, next, one pianist, dead or alive, you'd travel long and far to hear.
Well, my favorite pianist is Cortot, so that would certainly be true. But the fact that I can hear so many of his recordings, let's choose someone like, well, Liszt. Wouldn't it be
Yes,
great to go and listen to Liszt?
of course. Very good answer. One person, dead or alive, you'd love to play for.
Ooh, um, maybe Rachmaninoff. I mean, of course it would be
I feel
terrifying, but I would, yeah. I mean, I love his playing and his music so much. So yeah, maybe him.
I thought Rachmaninoff would feature in your answers somewhere. Um, do you, might be a silly question this, do you have any technical struggles?
Well, not that I'm going to talk to you about. Well, you know, in a sense, we're athletes. So every day is a starting from scratch. You know, every sprinter wakes up in the morning with stiff legs and has to warm up. And I think the same is true of us. And certainly every dancer, you know, dancers talk about getting out of bed in the morning crippled until they've gone to the bar and worked. So I would say that, you know, everything's difficult to do well, and everything's difficult to do under the pressure of 2,000 people sitting in the hall watching you. So that's a
Absolutely.
partial answer.
Absolutely no. Very wise. What would be your advice to an amateur pianist about how to improve?
I think practice slowly, practice without pedal. Don't be afraid to use the metronome. Write in fingerings. These are all things that I've spoken about before and written about. But yeah, and I forget them myself. And then I came back to Rachmaninoff third just recently again, having not played it for a while. And I thought, I used to practice this very, very slowly. Like Joseph Levine had the four metronome marks. So let's say that the performing tempo is 100, you go 80, 60, 40, and then up to and work like that. And it works. You know, Rachmaninoff used to practice obsessively slowly. Apparently, he used to practice an hour of technical exercises and scales every day. So, but he sounds better than anyone else, so maybe there's something in that. Well, I wouldn't recommend that for an amateur pianist for sure, because you want to enjoy it. Amateur does mean to love, so
Yes.
one should always enjoy it.
Fantastic. Last question. One composer you're not quite ready to tackle.
Oh, Bach. I've never played any Bach professionally. Well, I did one, the first season I played the G major toccata because I'd been playing it in my exams before. But no, I've played Bach Busoni and Bach Cortot and, but not Bach.
Why might that be?
I don't feel I know what to do with it. And I don't love it enough to work with it. It's my blind spot, really. Um,
He's so holy and spiritual and
well, that's the problem. I'm not. But I tell you, Erica, what I do love is Wanda Landowska playing Bach on the harpsichord. Now
okay.
when I hear her chromatic fantasy and fugue, to me that's Bach. I love that. Um, and then in orchestral Bach, I love hearing Mengelberg, the sort of
Oh
completely
yes.
wrong according to all of the, our modern understanding, but making Bach chorales sound like a Bruckner slow movement. But
Oh,
I
you're
do
absolutely
enjoy
right.
that. I
Oh,
do enjoy
beautiful.
it.
So romantic. So
Yeah.
romantic.
But
Yeah.
I've discovered Landowska. I just think she's incredible. Because of course everything has to happen with the rhythm and the inflection. Nothing can happen on the harpsichord with tone. And I think maybe it's because a lot of Bach playing is just too pretty, is too precious.
Okay.
Every
Yeah.
phrase, shape to the end, and then another one began in shape to the end, and I don't like it. It doesn't. Whereas the harpsichord speaks to me. Actually, also Trevor Pinnock, I heard his Goldberg variations, and I thought, gosh, this is the first time I've really loved this piece, hearing it
Mm.
on the harpsichord. So
Mm. Oh, Stephen,
there
that's
we
so
are.
interesting.
Also, actually, Schiff playing on the clavichord was a bit of a. He made an album playing Bach on the clavichord, which is a bit of a revelation. It's beautiful. What a gorgeous sound.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, what a great conversation we've had today.
Thanks. It's been such fun.
We could have spent much longer. But, oh, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. We'll see you around London.
See you around London at the next fruit shop or something.
Yes,
Or at a recital. Aren't you at the Wigmore Hall quite soon?
I am in
Mm.
May. May, is it May 9? It's sort of middle of May sometime.
Yes, yes. Oh, I will look forward to hearing you
Yeah.
there.
Thank
Oh,
you.
anyway, we have to sign off.
We
But
do,
thank you
yes.
so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen. That was Rachmaninoff's arrangement of Kreisler's Liebeslied, and it was performed by Stephen Hough. Pianist podcasts are free, and a really good way to support what we do is by subscribing to Pianist. Visit our website at pianistmagazine.com and listen to us on YouTube by searching Pianist Magazine. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter, which is full of extra playing tips and useful information. Go to pianistmagazine.com to find out how to sign up.